Well, welcome everybody. Thank you for joining us today. My name is Ian Alexander, and I head up marketing here for telemetry, and I'm joined by Stephen Schwander, who heads up our client solutions group. Stephen, good afternoon to you.
Good afternoon.
And good morning to me. I'm out on the West Coast. Stephen's in St. Louis, and we're teaming up here to talk about building consumer quality candidate experiences. I think we've got a pretty good program for you here. Before we get started, a couple of things. I want to tell you a little bit about telemetry. For those of you who aren't familiar with telemetry, we provide a recruitment marketing platform, and that works with your ATS to help you do a number of things. One is to attract more candidates with things like automated job distribution to job boards, social media sites, recruiting agencies, and digital ad sources. We provide a CRM system that helps you find and engage candidates with a centralized talent pool that consists of both your internal candidates, like past ATS applicants, as well as internal employees, but also external sources of resumes, like resume databases, et cetera. And we put that all together for you and help you create pipelines to recruit against future job need, source for existing jobs, and then also engage those within your talent pool with mass email campaigns. And finally, what's probably most relevant today is we provide, help you provide better candidate experiences through rich content-laden, targeted career sites and that are mobile and include mobile, flexible apply processes as well. So that's a little bit about what we do, but we really want to talk about candidate experiences in general. So as we go through the presentation, if you have any questions, use the GoToMeeting or GoToWebinar console that should be on your screen and just chat them in. Most likely we'll deal with the questions at the end because, as you know, in these things, oftentimes you ask a question, it's on the next slide. So, but go ahead and throw those questions and even comments up as they occur to you, and then we'll talk about them at the end should we have time. So Stephen, why don't you kick us off with the agenda here?
Sure. So we want to talk a little bit about, what is the candidate experience, kind of define that both broadly, but then also specifically in terms of online experience. We want to talk about, why does it matter? Why is this important for us? We'd like to kind of define a consumer quality experience and what it means to bring a consumer quality experience into the talent acquisition, and then see if we can outline some key practices for recruiting success. And of course, we'll leave some time at the end for some Q&A.
And really try and put the meat of the presentation on the key practices for sure. So just to level set here, what is candidate experience? There's a lot of definitions out there. For the purpose of this webinar, we define it as the quality of the interactions a potential candidate has with a prospective employer. And we define that from the point of curiosity about working for that employer all the way through to accepted offer letter. Anything beyond offer letter, we talk about that in terms of new hire experience. And curiosity is pretty much the beginning of the entire process. So, that starts with your employer brand. What is the perception that's out there of the promise that you make in terms of what it's like to work for your company? But it's things like ads, it's jobs and job descriptions. It's your career site content and the navigation and design of your career site. It's your social network content and integration with your entire recruiting process. It's the application process and the engagement that happens around post-application. It's any communications that happen between your organization and the candidate. It's recruiter interactions, obviously. Everything logistically, from scheduling to the environment of the interview space and your lobby, and of course interviews and the offer itself and the communication of that offer. So with that broad definition, what we're going to focus on today is everything that's in red there. And the reason we're focusing on that is typically, for most organizations, only a small percentage of the candidates that are interacting with you on a daily basis do you even know about. Do you have any sense of what they're doing or what their experience is like? So what I have here is a funnel, and within this funnel, this is taken from one of our clients, um, and it's a real funnel. So, and I would even be so bold as to say it's maybe a little bit better than normal funnels. Um, so it starts with a million, roughly a million views. And of those a million views, 111,000 are going to start an application process. And of those 111,000 that start an application process, 26,000 are going to become applicants, finish the process. At that point, they become known to you. So out of all those millions of people interacting with you online, you only get to know 3% of them if you're lucky. All right? So that's why I'm focusing on that 97% is so hugely important, right? One of the reasons it's so hugely important is that being able to make small incremental improvements in that ratio translates into huge gains in terms of how many people you're able to interact with and get to know and control the experience on a more granular basis, but also how many people you're able to source from and ultimately hire. So let's just change that equation a little bit and turn that 3% that ultimately engage with you in some way, whether that's through an application or other means, and we'll talk about that a little bit later. Let's turn that into 10%. All right, so now you know 10% of the people that visit your website. Those 26,000 applicants that we saw on the previous slide now turn into almost 100,000 applicants, right? And that's just a 4% incremental increase in the number of people you're able to convert. But that makes a 400% increase nearly in the amount of applicants that you have, and almost 3 times. That 600 hires turns into now almost 2,300 hires. So you get almost a 300% increase in your ability to hire people. So imagine what your cost per applicant and your cost per hire does, how it can be affected when you're dealing with such small incremental changes with these numbers. So look at that a little bit differently. Obviously, many of you have heard this before. Your candidates are customers. They're potential customers. They're also voters, which is important in a lot of different industries in terms of affecting your ability to do business on a business level. They're social network commentators, and they're also potentially gold star prospects for your competitors. So when you think about those numbers a little bit differently, I'll go back to the million views to the 617 hires. Think about that in terms of candidate satisfaction. So of all those candidates that you know and you don't know, if you hire 617 out of a million, 0.6%, you could probably make a pretty good bet that they're probably pretty happy, right? So you've satisfied 0.6% of the candidates that you've interacted with, and 99.4% are somewhere between satisfied and downright angry. All right, so that's why it's so important to provide the absolute best candidate experience within the context of what we're talking about today, that online candidate experience, as you possibly can.
So Ian, as you were looking at those numbers, I'm sitting here thinking about, how much in, the picture that you've shown us, right? So much of that is almost unknown, right? Or almost, we might even see it outside of our sphere of influence, meaning all of those, you started with 964,000 views. There's probably some level of frustration around the view and the start. So, what's that online experience look like? Is it satisfying, or is it frustrating? And I doubt very much that you'll see a whole lot of anger at that point in the process. But what you are seeing is probably a lot of frustration around the candidate experience, where they just give up and they move off onto someplace else, as opposed to getting further down the line where you now are looking at those 26,000 applicants who you tried so difficult, so hard to get in. And now I think you're going to probably see some of the anger, rise at that level. Now, we're going to be talking about how to manage some of that unknown at the front end electronically, because these are levers that we can pull as an organization with a relatively small group of people. The anger issues, I think it's been shown, and this is out of scope of our conference call today, but it's been shown that those anger issues are quite often around non-communication back to applicants during the application process. So applicants, sitting out there for months and sometimes years on end with hearing, no responses back in terms of what their status is. So it's very interesting when you look at, uh, all of the levers that are available to us, and trying to identify then, which ones can we pull without a whole lot of change management, and which ones require a little bit more change management.
Yes, absolutely. And we're gonna talk a bit about that. And part of where the frustration may lie is we throw this term around consumer quality experience, and we're hearing that a lot both in the application world, application meaning um, you know utilities, software programs, but also in terms of web experiences. So I kind of call this building consumer quality web experiences. That's all over the board. But when we talk about what do we mean by a consumer quality web experience? The short answer is it's mobile, and it's mobile for more than just the fact that more people are accessing the web on mobile phones. The reach and the influence and the impact of mobile technology goes beyond just the point of people accessing the web on mobile. We'll talk about that a little bit more later. But the big news is this year Google announced that more searches are happening on mobile devices than are on web devices. So if you're kind of thinking, well, mobile is cutting edge, and mobile doesn't necessarily apply to the recruiting process. I think you're going to see here that it absolutely does in significant ways. So if we kind of peel back, of that over 50% that start their searches on mobile devices, about 50% of them are using search engines. About 33% of them are starting directly on a branded career site. So they're using, only 26% are using apps, what we think of as apps. So they're using their mobile devices like a desktop device in terms of how they're entering the search process and interacting with the web. Now, again, this is consumer quality. We're talking about consumer quality, so this is stuff like autos and apparel and electronics, etc. But if you're in the recruiting process, in the recruiting world, in a lot of ways, it's even more staggering, because this is a survey that was done by Glassdoor. They do it every year. And their results are that 9 in 10 job seekers will be using their mobile device in the next year to start their search process, to be searching for jobs. And if you dig a little bit deeper into that, the issues that job seekers are finding is that the search and the apply process is not very friendly to mobile devices, and it's deterring them from engaging with companies online within their job search. So those are pretty big numbers, and they are numbers that you need to pay attention to, because the opportunity that's in front of you is the ability to change the way you interact online with mobile users to harvest a tremendous number of potential candidates. Depending on what kinds of jobs you hire for, it's even more important to be able to engage those people and show that you can engage those people in a mobile way. Again, we talk about consumer quality experiences. How does that manifest itself in terms of design? I talked about how mobile technology has affected more than just people having a phone in their hand and investigating job searches and interacting with the web. It's also started to create a common design language that you'll see on the web, and it's basically a combination of two things: the impact of mobile on web design and the impact of content management systems like WordPress or Joomla or Drupal uh, that have made on the web design process. In other words, catering to the mobile audience as well as being able to deploy websites in an efficient and maintainable way have both come together to make it more attractive to maybe compromise some of an organization's desire to be completely different in exchange for more mobile traffic and easier maintainability of websites. So again, this has all kind of come together to create this sort of almost sort of common design UI that you'll see across the web. So what does that look like? That's big hero images above the fold that kind of are very impactful and allow you to focus people on the action that you want them to take when they hit your website. In more complex environments, we have lots of content, lots of different kinds of content. You'll see things like card layouts. So you see this a lot on media sites, on sites where you have lots of articles. You see this on sites like Netflix, where you take chunks of content and you create little portals into that content through cards. You'll see long scrolls. You know, the days of get everything above the fold, I mean, that myth has been exploded. And really the common design language now is long scrolls and allowing people to investigate by scrolling down as opposed to jumping between pages. And finally, what's kind of part and parcel of all of this is the desire to have responsive design. In other words, deploying one website that's going to recombine itself and display differently and effectively no matter what device you're on. So all those things have come together and kind of created this, again, common UI for websites that people are getting very used to. And so the effect of that is if your career site doesn't conform to that on some level, then you're asking your traffic to learn your website, to spend more time trying to figure out how to get where they want to go. The more you can leverage a common design, the more you're making it easier for someone to then get on your site, understand it, and interact with you. So what else is a consumer quality experience? Filtered results, all right? So whether you are cognizant of it or not, virtually every time you go on the web, you're getting content that's tailored directly to you. I think all of us know that when we do a Google search, we're not getting everybody's Google search responses. We're getting ours because Google collects information on us and it gives us things that maybe are close to us in proximity, maybe reflect things we've searched for in the past. So we're getting tailored results. Based on who we are, we're getting what we want to see according to Google. Same with Facebook. You know, you're getting not all of your friends' posts. You're getting your friends' posts that Facebook's algorithm thinks that you want to see. Those of you who are familiar with the term filter bubble, it kind of came out of this use of Facebook, that we all live online in this kind of filter bubble, that what we've done in the past is driving what we're seeing in the future. So we live in these little homogeneous worlds where we're getting only kind of what the web wants us to see. And that's important on from a career side standpoint because people are used to getting content that is tailored to them. It's also important from just a general recruitment marketing standpoint that you really need to be thinking about who you're marketing to and delivering content that's relevant to them so you can penetrate that filter bubble. And it's much harder to penetrate that filter bubble. It's difficult to get broad messages out to broad groups of people online. And then finally, I do the Netflix example because I went to the dentist the other day and my new dentist has, you know, a screen up above and says, hey, do you want to watch a documentary here while we work on your teeth? And I said, or a movie. I wanted to watch a documentary. But it was impossible to find because their Netflix was so completely different than mine. It was disorienting, and I ended up having to watch some kids movie because that's all I could find. So the message here is consumer quality means delivering the content that's most interesting to your potential employees and candidates. So to go a little bit farther with that, it's large type, it's less type, People are not reading as much, so you're going to see higher bounce rates. You're going to lose more people if they have to squint on their mobile device to see your particular headline or your call to action button. It's prominent call to action buttons, and it's easy conversion. All right, so if you look at the MailChimp example there, you know exactly what MailChimp wants you to do. They want to tell you who they are, and they want you to sign up for a free account. If you want to sign up for Hulu, very simple sign up form, and this is actually probably more complex than most. There's probably 8 fields there that they want you to fill out, and it's recruiters thinking like marketers. What's the minimum amount of information I need to get this person into my database, my talent pool, so that I can then begin to reach out to them and get more information, learn more about them, and then ultimately get them focused on the right jobs. And again, we think back to that 90-10% or that 97-3% ratio. The benefits of harvesting more visitors at the front end of your process can be staggering in terms of results. So we talked a little bit about what a consumer quality experience is. I throw this slide up, we throw this slide up in sort of every presentation that we do around recruitment marketing, and it's what we call the recruitment marketing maturity model. And we've developed this over the last couple of years, working with our clients and prospective clients, and really understanding kind of where organizations are and where organizations are trying to get in terms of their ability to attract and engage and convert potential candidates into great employees. So we've kind of put this together. It deals with everything from inbound practices, so what are you doing to attract and advertise your jobs, outbound sourcing, how are you proactively gathering candidates, sourcing candidates, engaging candidates through a centralized talent pool. And then finally, what are you doing in terms of candidate experience and candidate conversion, all right? So it goes from basic to functional to modern to optimized. Most of the organizations we talk to fit between functional and modern, but we do this because it's a good map to kind of see where you are and where maybe you want to get, and it creates sort of a standard that you can begin to sort of discuss how to get there, and it's sort of a common look at it. So on the basic side, that's the organization that has a basic career site that's kind of driven out of their applicant tracking system and a basic web apply process, one size fits all. Throw your jobs up and hope you have a good process in place. When you get to more functional, now we start to see from the candidate experience and conversion side of things, we start to see things like job-specific apply processes. We start to see HR taking a little bit more ownership of the career site, maintaining the content, providing the content, etc. Now that you have a career site up, you start to think about things like search engine optimization. Is our career site in general optimized so that Google can crawl it and maybe index us in the search results? Then when you move to more targeted multi-channel recruiting, is what we call modern recruiting. From a candidate experience side, you're getting more targeted. So you're starting to see microsites underneath your global site that are targeted to key job groups, whether that's job families or departments within your organization, or whether that's specific targets within your recruiting process like college recruiting or military recruiting, starting to segment your content based on who you're going after. You're starting to see internal career sites, again, along with segmentation, creating a different experience for your internal candidates and creating mobility sites for them. Social and mobile application processes start to crop up. You start to really take seriously the mobile experience and deploy that. And then finally, being able to get your individual jobs search engine optimized so that your individual jobs can be crawled by not only Google but also Indeed and other aggregators, etc. So you get more visibility into your existing individual jobs. And then finally, optimized, that's where you're using the data that you capture around how people use your site, what your conversion rates are, what your time on the site is, what your flow on the site is, where you might have bottlenecks, and really starting to optimize your candidate experience based on analytics data, and then use that data to improve your outcomes. So that's that, and we will make these slides available afterwards, so you can take a look at this at your leisure, because it's a lot of stuff and a lot of small type. But with that, we'll get into the keys to candidate experience success. And Stephen, why don't you talk? I've been talking about mobile. Why don't you talk about it this time?
Sure, yeah, thanks. Why don't you pass it over to me so that I can state the obvious? So after all of your focus on the importance of mobile, our first key to candidate experience success is to make it mobile, right? And I think, as Ian pointed out earlier, even more than on this slide, as many as 80%, if not more, candidates browse jobs on a mobile device. I mean, I know I've got Indeed on my mobile device, and I've got LinkedIn on my mobile device. And so I'm often starting job searches, when I'm doing research, from that position. So it's very important. I may not jump onto a specific career site, but when I hit that page, it's got to be mobile, and it's got to be working, right? And it's important for us also from an SEO perspective, because the new search algorithms at Google and other search engines really favor mobile-friendly sites and mobile-friendly job listings. So this is a key too, and a lot of our companies are saying, okay, we know we need to be mobile, so they're creating a mobile, responsive site in, one of these content management systems that Ian mentioned before, WordPress, Drupal, etc. But then they're passing people over into an applicant tracking system front end to search for jobs, and that's not mobile friendly. And frankly, you're going to get a lot more SEO from your job content than you are from your general career content. So it's very important that this be mobile all the way through, right? We just typically know that companies that are lagging on technology and not being mobile is really kind of a key idea there. You're going to turn off that top talent. Top talent wants to know that they're going to come to work for a company that is on the cutting edge. It's not dropping back and behind. So it's important. Mobile just kind of speaks that. You want to be able to offer social profile and cloud storage options for submitting resumes. So it's not enough just to be able to parse a resume from a desktop per se, but in that application process, or let me just say a call to action process, you want to be able to give them the option to use a LinkedIn profile if that's what they want to use to start that process, or maybe they've got a resume or CV sitting on Google Drive, for instance, right? So you want to make that option available to them. So that's got to be mobile as well. So you got to think down to that level as well. And then you want to give people on a mobile browser the option to go ahead and complete this later on, so you're not losing them, and that's perfectly legitimate. One of the funny things is, if you think about it, and we don't have to say a whole lot about this, you just have to think about it and be creative. We take our mobile device with us everywhere, right? So if we get just kind of a desire to search for a job, we could be sitting anywhere, and we might be interested in the content, but not be in a place. Even if the technology works, we may not be in a place that we want to complete even the simplest process. So go ahead and give them some options, right? They can email themselves later. They can save it. They can just do a light application process, come back later and finish it. So make it mobile, but think more than just responsive website design.
Yeah, and if we go back to that Glassdoor slide, there's a huge number of people that report using mobile devices to search for jobs at work, which is probably terrifying to HR people, but at the same time, it's a huge opportunity. You can think of yourself as marketing to passive candidates who might be searching for jobs, or ostensibly passive candidates, mobile making them active. At your competitor's site through mobile. So it goes beyond just the numbers in terms of you can access this much more traffic if you serve them properly with mobile experiences, but strategically gets you into gives you a channel into potential candidates that are employed someplace else and maybe not super actively looking for jobs. Excuse me. So we say this runs across all of your recruitment marketing efforts. Start with segmenting your candidates and creating personas. Personas, again, are maps, are profiles of your ideal candidate by job family. So go through the exercise of defining your key employee groups by job family, and then creating a persona. What does our ideal desired candidate look like? What kinds of job titles? What title do we give them here internally? What titles might they have outside of our company? What do they do for hobbies? What drives them? You can look to some of your internal top performers and survey them to get information about this. It's part data-driven and it's part imagination-driven to get to things like what do they do on the weekends? Where do they shop? What kinds of hobbies do they have? All these things will help you at multiple different levels in the recruitment market process. But for the purposes of delivering more targeted content, you need a basic level of persona definition by job family that'll help deliver that content and the relevant jobs to those particular constituencies, candidate constituencies, as they interact with you online.
Yeah, I think jumping into that same mode is then, once you've segmented and targeted that candidate group, then how do you deploy targeted messages to them? So, one of the ways to do that is by actually developing targeted microsites as a part of your larger career site. So rather than having one huge career site with lots and lots of content that people probably don't want to read, you can actually then deploy smaller microsites with less content per se, but more targeted to what your audience wants to hear. I think we heard Ian's painful dentist story. He had a different experience because he was coming to Netflix from the dentist office as opposed to from home. Well, we should be able to have the same kind of experience, albeit not painful, when people come to our career site. So maybe based on the keyword searches that they've delivered, maybe they land on a different microsite than just simply the home page, right? Where then we have key messages for job families, perhaps, or for locations, perhaps, so that we can highlight some information differently. Because particularly if we're making it on a mobile site, that content has to be lighter. Therefore, it has to be more targeted and it has to be absolutely more relevant, right? So you can highlight the relevant jobs, the relevant information for that audience. You can actually get detailed conversion tracking. So whatever the call to action is, if it's applying for a job or joining a talent network or filling out a survey, you can get detailed conversion tracking for that targeted site.
Yeah, and that's an example that you talk about, Stephen. There you highlighted as kind of search engine optimizing individual pages within your career site targeted to specific employee groups. But when people hit the front end of your site, it should be very easy to say what kind of job seeker are you, what career track are you on? Choose here, and we'll take you to a more tailored experience, both the jobs that you see and the content that we deliver to you. And then email often. Communication is huge in every part of our life, as we know, our personal lives and as well as with our candidates. So, obviously every candidate needs to be notified that their application was received. And I would shudder to consider that anybody on this call does not touch that base. But you need to sort of map out the candidate's journey within your hiring stages and understand what reasonable steps can we communicate with the candidate. And this is oftentimes a tricky situation, but if you do a little work and you work with your application stages within your applicant tracking system, you can trigger auto emails at key steps. And certainly you need to send notifications when people are not being considered and when those jobs have been filled. Now, the problem I see a lot is the candidate who applies for a job, they get notified that the application has been received. They may even get notified that we're considering you for this particular position. They may get a second notification, and then 9 months later, out of the blue, comes an email from an applicant tracking system saying, we've hired somebody for this job, and this job has been closed. That happens more often than you would think, and that should
And those are
ever
the
happen.
lucky and those are the lucky ones, Ian, right? Some of them don't get them at all because of the way their ATSs are configured, right?
Well,
And and this doesn't happen because we all want to be rude. It happens because we get busy, number one. Number two, a lot of times we don't want to reject our top tier of candidates because we want to keep them warm because maybe, number two and number three are really good, even though they're not going to end up being number one and being chosen. So we don't want to alienate them, but then in the short run, but then we end up alienating them in the long run because they get no communication whatsoever, or they get that very terse rejection 9 months later. And a little bit out of scope from the conversation today, although maybe not, maybe this is where it actually hits, is keeping all of these concepts together into a CRM tool, right? How do you communicate with candidates, not applicants out of your ATS, but candidates? And can your past applicants become candidates for future experiences and future job applications? Can you see in your CRM tool how far somebody got in your ATS? Can your CRM tool identify people who have been sitting at a in limbo for 6 months so that your recruitment marketing team, who might be more sensitive to these things than your overworked recruiters are, can then segment that database and send out some positive messaging. So again, just some ideas in terms of how to maintain that candidate experience and try to keep the anger level, which I think is probably higher at the end of the funnel than at the beginning, at bay.
yeah, and I was going to say it's almost better not to send anything than send something 9 months later, because then you just look sort of incompetent and inept. Whereas not sending anything just is probably putting you in the middle of the bell curve in terms of all the organizations out there. Um, but yeah, neither option is great. And think about it, Stephen. How many organizations do we talk to day in and day out that are trying to move from a situation where they're more reactive in their recruiting to more proactive, and they're implementing those CRM systems to be able to then source from past applicants where they've had a difficult time doing that in the past with their applicant tracking system. So now they've got their applicant tracking system candidates within a CRM system that they can use. Boy, wouldn't it be great if those past applicants had good experiences? It makes a huge difference on your talent pool that maybe you're not utilizing today, but I guarantee you will be utilizing in the future as your processes and your tools that you have access to allow you to do that. Keeping them in the loop. It's much better to hear bad news and be respectfully communicated throughout the process than it is to be ignored or feel sort of minimized. And I would even say if you have jobs or you work in an organization where there's a lot of change and jobs get opened and then they get reevaluated and then they get tabled and then they get morphed into another job, create a stage within your applicant tracking system that is a holding stage, and just for the purposes of communicating out to those candidates, hey, this situation on this job has changed. It's in limbo right now, or however you choose to characterize it, and we'll get back to you if something changes. That's a great way to stop that 9-month process of, suddenly out of the blue, you get a rejection email from a job you forgot you applied for. So take ownership, consider taking more control of the process into HR and recruiting. Modern content management systems, as we talk about, allow recruiting organizations to take ownership of changes, and maintenance of the career site puts you kind of in charge. You can still work with internal resources, whether that be IT or marketing or what have you, but take more control of the career site, and it gives you more control in terms of what you're doing. Say you get more familiar with what the options you have in terms of microsites and targeted content, etc. And then make job search prominent and intuitive. This is a huge thing that I see on so many career sites. Your jobs are what candidates are looking for. As much as you may love that 360-degree view of your lobby, or the break room video, or the case study of Jane in accounting, who was also a rock climber. Those are all great things. But what candidates come to your site for is your jobs. So they need to be front and center. I see this all the time where it's almost impossible to find a call to action to view and search for jobs. So you not only need to make your job search prominent on your career site, but you need to make it intuitive and effective. Because the better your search is in terms of someone's ability to come off the street and type in some keywords and get really to the right jobs, the higher your conversion rates are going to be, and the more applicants you're going to get, because you're going to be getting more people to those jobs. And unless and until you're monitoring the traffic on your career site, you have no idea how well you're able to funnel people to the right jobs. So having all these pieces in place to be able to not only do things like put your calls to action in your job search prominently on your site, but then also look to see what the results of that is in terms of career site traffic flow and conversion from traffic to applicant to completed application. All those things will work together to significantly increase the number of applicants you get at the end of the day.
Yeah, I think another one is if we start talking about relevant jobs, relevant content, again, going back to the segmentation conversation we had before, and the segmentation also of jobs, right? So that we can group jobs around related content and related keywords. And I think this is important because it's very much like we shop, right? So if I'm shopping for PCs, I'm looking for other related content around PCs. If you go to Best Buy and look for a television, they're always going to show you accessories on the side as well, so that they're encouraging your involvement on their site. We want to do the same thing with jobs. So if you're searching for a job family, for instance, you can actually then provide relevant content around that specific job family. So it might be that somebody runs a search for IT jobs, and they land on a results page, and now the content is around IT jobs. It gives them relevant content in context, so that you're able to then share those share those ideas without making them run around your website, but also related jobs, right? And some of the testimonials. So maybe then I click open on an HRIS project manager job, and on that very job page, now I see that video of the IT project, of the HRIS project manager who does rock climbing, right? Or now I see some testimonies about how great it is to roll out new solutions for HR, etc. So we see the related information right down on the job page as well. We can display relevant videos there. We can relative content, and we can then again push what we have to sell, right? So we treat our candidates like consumers, and what they're here to purchase is one of our jobs. And so we want to be able to get that job information out in front of them simply, easily, right? And entice them to the call to action.
And speaking of calls to action, simple changes in calls to action like buttons can sway response a very large amount. And the example here is, let's change the color of our Get It Now button, and we've got a 25% increase in response rate. So you need to be thinking beyond sort of just the out-of-the-box apply here or join our talent network here. Let's get started might pull better than apply. Now, it might not, but you need to be thinking in terms of testing different variations and placements of your calls to action, which is going to be job search, it's going to be talent network, it's going to be apply for jobs, because those can make big changes in response rate.
One of the things I like to encourage people to do, although I realize it's really difficult to do, but to try to make job titles relevant to the target audience. And the reason I say this is because, again, if you remember back when we talked about most candidates will start their job search on a mobile device, and they will probably not start that job search on your career site, per se, unless they have a reason to do so. So they may start at Indeed, and or they may start at Beyond, Simply Hired, you name it, right? And when they click that and they begin to see the long list of jobs, what in your job title is going to get them to click on that one instead of somebody else's job title, right? So if you can craft titles that are relevant to the outside world, number one, so they don't have that, really, internal HRISC kind of feel, right? And number two, maybe have a little bit of an emotional appeal, right, or emotive appeal that says, yeah, I'd like to do that. I think one of my favorite television ads now on employment is General Electric, where you have this kid who's all excited he's going to work for General Electric, and his really cool Java developer friends think he's stupid for going to work for a manufacturing company, and his parents think it's great he's going to work for a manufacturing company, but he can't lift up a heavy hammer. I mean, here's a kid who's fallen in love with a job that probably, if it just said, Java developer level 3, he might not have applied to it. But changing the way the world works, that's what's gotten him to apply for that job. So I don't know how we do that. It's an operational challenge. I understand. I've run recruitment operations for Global 500 companies. I know it's difficult, but this would go a long, long ways.
Great. And we are getting a little bit short on time here, so we're gonna pick up the pace a bit. But finally, here, related to that, craft realistic and compelling job ads for a couple of different reasons. For kind of what Stephen was talking about, you want to make your job ads compelling and inspiring, but to kind of go beyond, and this is key, go beyond those line by line job duty job ads for a couple of different reasons. One, it does not differentiate your job from any other job in terms of interest, but also you're going to get resumes and cover letters that are completely tailored to every job duty that is there. It makes the vetting process that much more difficult. So rather than do that, focus on expected results for the job. It's going to be more inspiring and more compelling to people who do that job, and paint a picture in a day of life of an employee doing that job. So you give a window into kind of what it's like to work for your company. But definitely stay away from the line-by-line job duties.
And our next point gets just a little bit technical, but really you want to remove the risk of having dead links, right? So expired jobs leave kind of a page not found error. That's frustrating to candidates. So you want to be able to use your Google Webmaster Tools to check for those. Also, want to be able to create redirect pages. So if there is a dead link there, it kind of funnels them back into maybe a job relevant page or a really much better experience. And then you can also eliminate the risk by having deeply integrated solutions for all of this as well.
Great. SEO your jobs. We talked about a little bit on the maturity model. When you get to the point when you can SEO your individual jobs, in other words, optimize the URL with keywords, optimize the headlines and job titles with keywords, make them available and easy for both Google and job aggregators to search, you're going to get a tremendous increase in traffic back to those particular jobs. And when you do that, you need to pay attention to, now that you've got your job on a search engine, how does it look once it's merchandised against all the others? You may have a tech support person that you decide, well, we're going to merchandise it to solutions engineers because that's what it's more commonly titled. Now you're going to be in line with 100 other solutions engineers in the first 10 pages of a search. So what is the meta description text that you put in there that makes it compelling enough for someone to click on that particular job? And again, make sure they're mobile, because you'll get higher searcher rankings if your pages are mobile.
Yeah, and I think it's important there, Ian, just to point out that you did say SEO your jobs, not just your career site, but your jobs as well. So a lot of your ATSs won't be able to do that. So you want to make sure that if you're using, our telemetry tool can certainly do that, but you want to make sure that you're getting that out into the job pages, not just the career site. And then here's a pet peeve. We could talk about this for an hour. Make those applications short. I'm old enough to remember when we couldn't take applications online. I helped implement the first applicant tracking system for Thomson Reuters out in New York, and we couldn't even take applications online. We could email resumes in, and people never filled out a complete application until they sat in for an interview. But now, because we can do it online, we take way too much data. The application rates, can be as low as 10% or less, because people know they don't want to go through this whole huge process. So if you can, make it really simple, maybe all people have to do is add their social profile and some EEO data. Boom, you're done. Come back after a full application if you need it later on down the process. It's going to help you drive a lot more applications and a lot more satisfaction.
And then that's right along with that, build a talent network, create an easy and casual way for people to engage with you. Not everybody's going to engage with you on an application level. Maybe they don't see the job they want right there within your jobs, or maybe they're just not ready to apply, but they're interested in your company. So get a very prominent button. Again, let them use resume or social profile extraction to just one click provide you with enough information that you can not only know who they are, but source in the future as you're looking for candidates proactively, and use that as a source for future hiring. And again, it goes back to thinking like a marketer. Again, marketers, we're concerned with building our database so that we have a growing pool of people that we can then market to in the future. We know they're interested in this because we provided an easy way for them to engage with us. So that's the first place we go to look for prospects for new sales. And then make it modern. We talked about the common design elements. Hero images, large text, fewer words, prominent calls to action. Again, I can't say this enough, web visitors are reading less and accessing the web via phones and tablets, so your career site should be evolving away from those brochureware sites where you have everything you can possibly write about your company on the multiple pages and multiple menus. Streamline it and take advantage of how people are interacting with the web today.
So this is a slide too that kind of gets down the technical realm a little bit, but you want to understand the referral path. In other words, where are visitors coming to your job from? And this can be a real challenge, particularly if you are an organization that's using one vendor for CRM, using another vendor for job distribution, using your ATS for your jobs. It's very difficult to track unless you have a fully integrated recruitment marketing platform. A lot of your candidates could find your jobs on sites that you would be embarrassed about, and so you want to be able to know where they are, and there are some ways to control that in terms of bot blockers, etc. So you really want to be aware on the full cycle perspective of where candidates are coming, or what their experience is across that entire realm. And if you can, regularly survey your applicants, right, to find potential problems in that candidate experience that you can't see.
Yep, again, that 97%, even within the ones that are on your career site, localizing problems where they might be on an unscrupulous site, providing sensitive information to that site, only to them thinking they're applying for a job, only then to get dropped on your career site at the front end of an application process. That's a horrible candidate experience that you really don't have a lot of control over unless you have a proactive strategy to understand when, where, and why it might be happening, and then preventing it.
This is fairly obvious, but you want to measure everything, right? This is another key to candidate experience. You can't improve the candidate experience if you aren't able to measure it, right? So measure, improvements that generate, some benefits on the bottom line. You want to measure and refine, basic key analytics, traffic to the site, how much time people are spending on the site and where, traffic by source, where they're coming from, applications by source that might be different, hires by source might even be different yet, right? Conversion rates, right? And break that down, not just hire conversions, but what are your calls to action and how are you pushing people, toward the ultimate yes? What are your drop-off rates, by page? How about by application process, right? What does your talent network look like in terms of how large it is and who's in there? These are just some examples, and again, it's a lot easier to measure these things if you're using an integrated platform.
And just want to leave you here with an example. This is a telemetry client of what I think is a pretty good career site that does a lot of things right, and kind of can give you some visual examples of what we've been talking about. So first of all, it's mobile. You can see the site on the left is the same site that's being rendered in the little mobile window here up in the right-hand corner. All right, so it's got a menu up at the top that you can navigate through. The job search is front and center on the mobile site. There's information about UPMC, and it gets you right into some branding videos if you don't jump right into the job search. So it's definitely mobile friendly. If you look in the upper left, we've got targeted microsites. So as you click on that career pathways, there's multiple different pathways depending on what kind of job family you might be interested in. So they're able to deliver sub-sites within this. That once you choose, I'm interested in nursing jobs, well, we've got a nursing site for you. And we understand our personas and we understand who we're trying to attract. So we've got content on there that matches that, and we're measuring it all along the way. I happened to take this screenshot last week, which was Veterans Day. So very smartly, they do a lot of military hiring. So they put a banner up there that spoke to the military portion of their targeting. Very timely, and I'm sure was very effective for them for that week. They've got a big hero image. It's easy to get into that into the particular career site, and then jobs are front and center right at the beginning. The first action you can take is get in there and search, not only by keywords, but by location or by job family. Again, that targeting and those pathways are being integrated into every single level of what they're doing. Then at the bottom, you'll see there's not a lot of text, very short paragraph about UPMC, and we get you right into what I would assume is a rotating video spot there, right there as we access the career site. There's a nursing video there. I'm sure they have rotating ones in, or perhaps nursing is their biggest need right now, so they're able to address that by bringing that content front and center. So I think this is a very quick career site that does a lot of things right, and it's not that difficult, and it adheres to a very common design standpoint, but looks great at the same time. So that is our presentation. I just wanted to let you know, and we've got 1 minute left. All of you are going to get a link to our candidate experience strategy snapshot, which has a lot of this information in it. We'll also send you a link to the archive of this presentation, as well as the slides as well. So all that will come to you. You don't need to do anything. And if you're interested in learning more about telemetry and our candidate experience solutions, or our recruitment marketing platform in general, you can visit telemetry.com, or you can email directly and I can point you, email me directly, I'll point you in the right direction. So I want to thank everybody for coming. Unfortunately, we don't have any time for questions, but we do have some questions which we will email you out our answers to post webinar. Again, on behalf of Stephen and myself, I want to say thank you very much and have a great day.